In a moment that shattered centuries of royal tradition, the palace issued a statement that sent shockwaves across Britain and beyond. Princess Charlotte, the young and poised daughter of Prince William, has been named the future Queen of Scotland. The implications? Monumental. The reactions? Explosive. And Prince Andrew? Reportedly blindsided, speechless and seething. This wasn't just a royal announcement, it was the spark that lit a fuse under the monarchy. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The announcement wasn't made through the usual royal press office. Instead, it hit the world in a carefully timed digital broadcast just past midnight, delivered in clipped, urgent language that left no room for interpretation. This wasn't a speculation or a soft suggestion, it was a declaration. Charlotte would one day ascend, not just as a royal, but as Queen of Scotland. The magnitude of that phrasing, Queen of Scotland, struck like lightning, igniting centuries-old tensions and unresolved constitutional undercurrents. Was this a nod to an independent Scotland, or a strategic counter to growing nationalist movements? The ambiguity only deepened the intrigue. Journalists scrambled for clarity, but no corrections came. This was no clerical error, it was a power move. Within minutes, chaos erupted across media platforms. Newsrooms erupted in confusion. Was the announcement real? Was Charlotte's name mistakenly released ahead of a scheduled internal royal reshuffle? But as the palace doubled down with a second confirmation, any doubt vanished. What remained was a single haunting question. Why now? Why her? Royal insiders quickly began whispering of mounting tensions between Buckingham Palace and Holyrood. Scotland's increasing call for autonomy had grown louder in recent years, and some believed this announcement was a preemptive strike, a symbolic gift of sovereignty wrapped in a royal face. But not everyone saw it as a gift. Prince Andrew, long sidelined and desperate for relevance, had allegedly set his sights on regaining public favour through Scottish initiatives. He had quietly aligned himself with Highland causes, funded charities in the region, and even tried to secure ceremonial positions within Scottish orders. He believed Scotland would be his second chance. Now, in one swift stroke, it was all gone and replaced by a child who, until yesterday, was considered years away from any political influence. As news vans circled Windsor, early footage captured Andrew storming out of the castle gates under cover of night. His face was grim, his hands clenched. A royal aide later revealed he had been completely unaware of the palace's intentions. "He found out with the rest of us," the aide said. "He wasn't just caught off guard, he was gutted." Senior royals scrambled to control the narrative, but the damage was done. Andrew, who once commanded entire fleets and wielded influence in global diplomacy, had just been outmaneuvered by a 10-year-old. This wasn't merely a generational shift, it was a symbolic coup, one that redefined succession, restructured legacy, and perhaps most provocatively, reignited the question of what it means to be royal in a kingdom that may soon fracture. Because as history has shown, titles can unite or they can divide, and this title, it had already begun to do both. But this wasn't just a modern twist in royal protocol. It was the culmination of years of quiet maneuvering, secret councils, and one powerful matriarch's vision. She may have departed this world in silence, but Queen Elizabeth II left behind more than memories. She left instructions. Hidden deep within her private Balmoral archives, a clause was recently unearthed. It didn't name Charles, it didn't name William, it named Charlotte. And it wasn't for the British crown, it was for Scotland. The true plan for succession wasn't buried in Westminster, it was carved in the Highlands. The discovery came not through official protocol, but by accident or perhaps fate. A Balmoral housekeeper, tasked with clearing the Queen's private study, reportedly stumbled upon a small, time-worn envelope wedged behind the frame of a portrait of Queen Victoria. Written in Elizabeth's unmistakable hand were the words, "To be opened upon political fracture." The document was immediately turned over to royal archivists, and within days, hushed conversations began to ripple through the inner circle. Its contents weren't merely historic, they were explosive. The Queen had foreseen a seismic shift, one that would force the monarchy to divide its influence in order to survive. And at the center of that survival plan was a child who, at the time of writing, was barely more than a toddler, Charlotte Elizabeth Diana. Sources claim the clause detailed the Queen's long-held fear that Scotland would one day break away from the United Kingdom not with fanfare or rebellion, but with quiet determination. And in that moment of separation, she believed, the Crown would have one chance to preserve its link with the Scottish people. That link would not come from the past, but from the promise of the future. In her words, the people would not accept another man of England. They would need something different, something new, someone who embodied both continuity and change. She chose Charlotte not because of birthright alone, but because she saw in her the calm resolve, the sharp mind, and the emotional intelligence needed to build bridges where others had burned them. The language in the letter was strikingly personal. There was no grandeur, no rigid formality. Instead, it read like a grandmother speaking from beyond the veil, leaving behind her final act of love, not just for her family, but for the nation she served. One passage in particular shook those who read it. Should the nations divide, let not our lineage be a symbol of fracture, but of unity. In Charlotte, I have seen the spirit of both crown and people. Those words were underlined 3 times. The emotional impact of the revelation hit hard, especially because the document had allegedly been sealed away without the knowledge of King Charles. According to a senior CE source, he had never seen or been told about this contingency, nor had Andrew. In fact, it appears the Queen was deliberate in keeping the clause from those she feared would politicize it. She entrusted its preservation to her personal Balmoral staff and a single royal legal advisor whose name was redacted from all internal correspondences. What's even more stunning is that the clause was drafted over a decade ago, revised multiple times as Charlotte grew, and finalized the year before the Queen's death, meaning this wasn't a fleeting idea. It was a plan she nurtured, in silence, as the monarchy publicly focused on Charles and William. This was not merely a document, it was a ticking time bomb, waiting for the right fracture in history to be activated. And now, with nationalism rising and the kingdom trembling under its own weight, the Queen's hand reaches out from the grave to crown a new monarch for a new Scotland. But if Elizabeth's quiet plan was powerful, it's nothing compared to the storm Charlotte's future reign would unleash within the royal family itself. He once walked with confidence, draped in royal titles and military honours. But Prince Andrew's world has crumbled now, with the Scottish crown slipping irrevocably into Charlotte's future. The final blow has landed. Palace insiders reveal shouting matches, broken glasses, and one chilling line: "She was never supposed to outrank me." For years, Andrew had clung to one hope that through Scotland he might stage a quiet return. While London courts turned cold and public sentiment soured, he redirected his ambitions northward. Away from the media glare, he nurtured ties with Scottish charities, offered quiet donations to local institutions, and built relationships with Highland aristocrats who still respected royal lineage over headlines. It wasn't redemption through public applause, it was reclamation through heritage. In his mind, Scotland was the final sanctuary, a place where his bloodline still held meaning, and his service, however tarnished, might be honoured again. He envisioned titles, estates, and ceremonies in Edinburgh. He saw himself as the overlooked Windsor who would rise again, not in Westminster, but in the Highlands. That illusion shattered the moment Charlotte's name was spoken. According to insiders, Andrew's reaction to the palace's announcement wasn't confusion, it was fury. The family council had convened that morning, a formality meant to display unity before the public. But what unfolded behind those gilded doors was anything but composed. Surveillance footage, now buried in restricted archives, reportedly captured Andrew slamming a chair against the table, his voice echoing down the corridor. He demanded answers, accused key aides of betrayal, and questioned the legitimacy of the Queen's hidden directive. Witnesses say his face went pale when a senior advisor uttered the words, "This was her will. We are only following it." Privately, Andrew's legal counsel has been scrambling. Sources close to the palace suggest he's examining constitutional loopholes, arguing that Charlotte's future coronation, especially in a divided Scotland, violates centuries of lineal precedents. He's not contesting her character. He's contesting her position. He believes she's being used as a pawn, a distraction from his forced erasure, and a direct threat to what he still sees as his rightful stature. His inner circle, now diminished but fiercely loyal, has reportedly floated the idea of a legal injunction, something to delay or question the clause, until it can be reviewed by independent legal bodies. A desperate move, but desperation is now Andrew's only currency. But perhaps the most haunting moment came not in a council room, but during a late-night call to King Charles. Aides confirmed the two brothers spoke for just 7 minutes. Andrew's voice was strained, trembling with rage and sorrow. And as the call ended, he delivered one final blow. "You've betrayed your bloodline." The line hangs heavy now in palace halls, whispered among staff like a curse. Because for Andrew, this wasn't just about Charlotte. It was about everything he had left to hold on to. And with one announcement, it was gone, replaced by a child he once dismissed as too young, too far removed, too safe to matter. But now she matters more than anyone. As Andrew raged behind closed doors, another figure remained unshaken and eerily calm because she'd seen it all coming. She doesn't need a crown to wield power. Catherine, Princess of Wales, has quietly emerged as the monarchy's strategic brain and Charlotte's fiercest protector. While others fought for relevance, Catherine planned. And those plans? They led here, to Charlotte, to Scotland, to a new royal order. In the wake of Queen Elizabeth's passing, a subtle reshuffling occurred not in public titles, but behind the velvet walls of royal influence. And at the centre of it all stood Catherine, no longer just the Duchess behind William, but the architect of the monarchy's next evolution. When others saw turbulence, she saw opportunity. While the family mourned, she stepped into the Queen's vacuum of foresight and began laying the groundwork for a new era, one where the crown would survive, not through tradition, but through transformation. In hushed circles, it's now confirmed she initiated what came to be known as the Future Sovereigns Working Group, a collection of loyal advisors, educators and historians who quietly designed Charlotte's future from the shadows. Her vision was precise. Charlotte wasn't just to be prepared for British royalty, she was being shaped for something broader, something older. Catherine insisted that her daughter be versed not only in the customs of Windsor, but in the legacies of Stirling, Edinburgh, and the Highland clans. She handpicked tutors with expertise in Scottish constitutional history. Gaelic instruction was introduced early. Field trips, not publicly disclosed, were arranged to historic Scottish landmarks. This wasn't coincidence, it was conditioning. A slow, deliberate weaving of two identities into one future sovereign. British by birth, Scottish by destiny. And while others played catch-up, Catherine manoeuvred through the palace's power corridors with silent efficiency. She met discreetly with Scottish constitutional experts, often under the guise of charity work. She listened more than she spoke, but when she did speak, decisions shifted. The soft power she wielded became impossible to ignore. Certain royal events once historically attended by the broader Windsor line began to exclude members of Camilla's extended family. Invitations vanished, titles were no longer mentioned, and slowly, without confrontation, the path cleared for Charlotte to stand alone. William watched, but rarely intervened. Those close to the couple say he trusted her judgment fully, even when the family bristled. Behind closed doors, he offered quiet nods, firm support, and one critical act: he ensured the group Catherine formed had direct access to key royal archives, bypassing bureaucratic delays. If the Queen's hidden clause set the stage, it was Catherine's strategy that moved the pieces. This wasn't a coup. It was a coronation in motion, one that didn't require jewels, trumpets, or public declarations. Catherine had already secured something far more valuable: control of the narrative. And in the royal world, perception is power. But as Catherine forged the future, another royal matriarch began to feel the chill of fading influence, and her name is Camilla. Once crowned beside Charles, Queen Camilla thought her place in history was secured. But with Charlotte's elevation and Catherine's rise, she now finds herself cast in shadow. insiders' whisper of cold glances, cancelled engagements, and a humiliating edit in next year's royal registry, Camila, former consort, not mother to any monarch. For Camila, the fall wasn't immediate, it was incremental, a slow erosion of status that began the moment whispers of Charlotte's future title reached her ears. At first, she dismissed them. She had fought too hard, weathered too much scandal, and stood too close to the throne to be so easily pushed aside. But the signs multiplied, quiet but unmistakable. Her portrait, once proudly displayed in Scottish council halls and official guest houses, began to disappear. No announcement, no explanation, just missing. In their place, newly commissioned images of Catherine and Charlotte, draped in tartan, smiling beside Highland dignitaries. It wasn't just about imagery, it was about symbolism. And Camila was no longer part of it. Her scheduled visits to Scottish patronages were quietly postponed, then cancelled. Weeks later, the same patronages were announced under Charlotte's name, with Catherine listed as royal patron in transition. Camila hadn't been consulted. She hadn't even been informed. Aides say she discovered it through a newspaper headline left on her breakfast tray. Her rage was immediate, but her sorrow came later when she retreated to the private chapel at Sandringham and, according to palace staff, broke down sobbing alone. This wasn't the future she had imagined. She had stood beside Charles during his most fragile moments. She had endured public scorn. And now? She was being written out. Palace PR directives shifted swiftly. Memos circulated instructing all communications teams to avoid using the phrase future monarchy in reference to Camilla's engagements. Official biographies were trimmed. References to Camilla's influence on succession discussions were replaced with generic language. One internal email later leaked read bluntly, "All forward-facing language must support the transition to the Charlotte-Catherine axis." Camila had become an afterthought at best, a relic of a passing era. Charles, ever the diplomat, was caught in the centre of a storm he could neither control nor pacify. Torn between his loyalty to the woman who stood by him through exile and scandal, and the undeniable tide of change sweeping toward his granddaughter, he faltered. Behind closed doors, he tried to assure Camila that her place was safe. But his silence in public, his refusal to push back against Charlotte's rising prominence, spoke louder than any reassurance. Even his courtiers admitted the king had begun signing off on documents that gave Catherine full operational control over Scotland-related engagements. Camila, once the queen of the realm, now found herself excluded from the realm that mattered most. Charlotte's very presence was a quiet threat to Camilla's legacy. She didn't need to speak. She didn't need to act. Her mere emergence as the chosen future was enough to unravel everything Camila had spent decades holding together. And perhaps that was the most painful cut of all that history would remember Camila as a temporary figure, a queen beside a king, but never a queen mother to the next sovereign. And as Camilla's influence faded, young Charlotte was preparing not with pomp, but with precision for the throne she didn't ask for but was born to embody. Behind those innocent eyes is a girl being shaped by legacy, resilience, and expectation. Charlotte may still be a child, but her path is already charted. From Gaelic lessons to secret visits to Stirling Castle, she's not just being raised, she's being forged into the Queen Scotland never knew it needed. From the moment Queen Elizabeth's sealed clause was discovered, preparations for Charlotte's future shifted into a quiet overdrive. While the world remained focused on William, Catherine, and the fallout around Andrew inside the walls of Kensington Palace, a second monarchy was being sculpted, one embedded not in grandeur, but in strategy. Private tutors, carefully vetted and sworn to secrecy, were brought in under the guise of cultural enrichment, NT. But their purpose was crystal clear, to teach Charlotte the intricacies of Scottish governance, history and diplomacy. Highland traditions were not just studied, they were internalized. Gaelic replaced French as the language of choice in private instruction. Every lesson was a brick in the foundation of a new future, one that would demand strength, not sentiment. But it wasn't just about politics, it was about presence. Catherine ensured Charlotte was taught the duality of legacy, the tragedy of Mary, Queen of Scots, and the calculated rule of Elizabeth I. Two women, both sovereigns, both symbols of power and loss. The stories weren't fairy tales. They were warnings, cautionary blueprints. And one night, after a particularly intense lesson on duty and sacrifice, Charlotte reportedly turned to her mother and asked, "Do I have to wear the crown?" Catherine didn't answer right away, because deep down, she knew that the question wasn't about fear, it was about understanding the cost. In those moments of uncertainty, a surprising figure stepped in. Princess Anne, known for her stern resolve and quiet wisdom, took a personal interest in Charlotte's training. Weekly private sessions were arranged, no media, no staff, just two women, one hardened by decades of silent service, the other still learning what it means to carry an empire's weight. Anne didn't offer comfort, she offered clarity, and Charlotte listened. Even psychological experts were quietly brought into the fold, not to mold her but to prepare her. Because this wasn't just about heritage, it was about handling a future where every word, every move, every silence could divide or unite nations. The challenge wasn't imply political. It was deeply personal. How do you raise a child to be a sovereign over two lands? How do you make her both British and Scottish, royal and relatable, powerful and restrained? The answer, it seemed, came in a newly revealed addition to Kensington Palace, a chamber known only as Scotland's Room, a space filled with artifacts, literature and symbolism from every corner of Scottish heritage. It wasn't ceremonial, it was strategic immersion. Charlotte is not being raised to inherit a throne, she is being conditioned to deserve it. Not with public fanfare, but with private resolve. She's not just a princess in waiting, she's the monarchy's greatest gamble. But outside the walls of palaces and castles, a storm brews, because not everyone in Scotland sees Charlotte's future as salvation. Not all Scots are cheering. For some, the announcement felt like a royal intrusion, a symbol of control, rather than empowerment. Protesters rally, leaders denounce, and whispers of a parallel coronation, a people's monarch, begin to circulate in Edinburgh's underground chambers. Within mere hours of the palace's announcement, the gates of Holyrood Palace were surrounded. Thousands descended, not in celebration but in fury. Banners that once bore prideful slogans of national heritage now carried biting words, "Scotland decides, not Windsor." The symbolism was impossible to miss. What the royal family framed as a gesture of unity, many saw as a veiled attempt to preempt independence with a child's crown. Cameras captured the intensity, chanting crowds, flags burned, and speeches filled with defiance. For some, Charlotte's naming was less about future hope and more about past wounds, reopened with gold-trimmed letters. The Scottish National Party wasted no time. Within 24 hours, their leadership released a blistering statement condemning what they called the imposition of hereditary dominance over a people seeking their own voice. Behind closed doors, SNP strategists accused the monarchy of using Charlotte as a political chess piece, an innocent face to soften the blow of royal influence in a country edging towards self-governance. Their words found traction fast. Council members in Glasgow, Dundee, and Inverness began removing royal crests and plaques from local buildings. City halls, once adorned with symbols of unity, quietly stripped themselves of Windsor identity. Polls taken in the days that followed revealed a nation split down the middle. Older Scots, who remembered Elizabeth's quiet dignity and wartime resolve, expressed cautious optimism. But younger generations? They were furious. Social media exploded with memes, parodies, and fury. Hashtags like #CrownOffOurBack and #Scotland first trended for days. This wasn't rebellion, it was resistance. The idea of a new monarch, especially one not chosen by Scots themselves, was branded by activists as a last desperate grasp by a fading empire. In the underground circles of Edinburgh, a new movement was taking shape. Anonymous leaflets appeared in university corridors and activist cafes, proposing a radical idea, a symbolic vote. A people's monarch chosen not by bloodline but by public will. It wasn't legally binding, but that was never the point. The gesture alone threatened to fracture the legitimacy of Charlotte's future role. One group proposed holding the vote on the same day as Charlotte's rumoured ceremonial recognition. The message was clear: if there's to be a crown in Scotland, it should sit where the people place it. And then came the most provocative act yet: plans for what was dubbed the coronation burn. A protest scheduled on Scottish soil where royal effigies, including a controversial depiction of Charlotte as a puppet, were to be set ablaze. It was theatre. It was provocation. But above all, it was a warning. The nation was listening, but not all were bowing. But while the streets rage, inside the palace walls, the final twist was already in motion, hidden in the last lines of Queen Elizabeth's sealed decree. Just when it seemed the story had reached its climax, a final page emerged. A forgotten clause in the Queen's sealed Balmoral papers, encrypted and witnessed only by Anne, outlined a ceremonial date. A date chosen not for its politics, but its poetry. And it wasn't Charles or William who would crown Charlotte. It was someone else entirely, tucked within a discreet leather-bound folder, marked only with the insignia of the late Queen. This final page had been missed, perhaps intentionally hidden, perhaps simply overlooked. It was discovered during a routine audit of the Windsor archives, long after the initial documents had ignited the storm over Charlotte's succession. But this page, this forgotten relic, contained instructions that would redefine not only the ritual of crowning a monarch, but the soul of the monarchy itself. In a script unmistakably Elizabeth's, the clause dictated a ceremony unlike any in modern history. There would be no pomp of Westminster, no grand halls or foreign dignitaries. Instead, there would be wind, sea, and stone on the Isle of Skye. The date selected? April 21st, the Queen's own birthday. A deliberate act of legacy, a passing of the flame not through decree, but through design. And in an unexpected twist, the clause named only one figure to conduct the rite: Princess Anne, not Charles, not William. Anne, the stalwart sister, the unshaken guardian of tradition, and the only royal, according to Elizabeth's note, who understood the weight of unspoken duty. The symbolism was undeniable. Anne, who had never worn a crown, would place one upon the head of her grandniece, not in domination, but in continuity. The choice of Skye added another layer of mystique, a land older than the Union itself, remote, untamed, sacred. The Queen's note mentioned it as a place where the wind has memory. For Elizabeth, it was where monarchy met myth, and where Charlotte would begin not as ruler but as servant to the land she would one day unite. It would not be a coronation, it would be a consecration. No golden robes, no roaring fanfare, just a moment that would echo into history like the tolling of a bell long buried in mist. When Catherine was informed, her reaction was deeply personal. "She'll walk the path, not inherit it blindly," she whispered to her confidant. That sentiment echoed the very core of the Queen's final words. The handwritten note, scrawled in ink that had begun to fade, closed with 6 simple but seismic words: "For Scotland I give her." It wasn't a command, it was a gift, a legacy. A decision made not in response to headlines or polls, but in reverence for the idea that power, to endure, must sometimes be passed through hands that never asked for it. And so, as one nation braces for transformation and the monarchy reshapes before our eyes, one question remains: what will Andrew do next? Cornered, disgraced, ignored. Prince Andrew is not finished. Sources suggest he's preparing one final move, a legal, political, or perhaps personal strike against the system that abandoned him. With allies in shadowy places and a vault of secrets at his disposal, Andrew's not just trying to stop Charlotte, he may try to bring the entire monarchy down with him. In the weeks following Charlotte's anointing, Andrew's behavior shifted from stunned silence to calculating defiance. Cut off from the family's strategic councils and excluded from the ceremonial plans unfolding on the Isle of Skye, he began reaching beyond palace walls. Foreign journalists known for their controversial exposés were spotted entering a private estate tied to his dwindling network. It wasn't just idle chatter, these were curated meetings, deliberate, controlled, and above all dangerous. Insiders fear he's preparing to go public not just with grievances, but with documentation. Whispers of a hidden diary have begun circulating, one allegedly filled with decades of untold events, financial irregularities, and blunt accusations that could rip through the image the monarchy has so carefully curated. Those closest to the inner circle say the diary was never meant to be seen. It was written during Andrew's most isolated years, when he felt most betrayed. It reportedly details how certain royals rose by silencing others, how influence was traded like currency, and how the Queen's final wishes may not have been as sudden or universally accepted as the palace has claimed. Anonymous sources who claim to have seen excerpts from the document describe it as explosive, and warn of bombshells that will shake the institution to its knees. But Andrew's campaign isn't limited to tabloids. He's said to be quietly reaching out to a forgotten class, exiled aristocrats, disgruntled former aides, and political outcasts with grudges of their own. His aim is to create a coalition, not to dethrone Charlotte directly, but to poison the soil before she ever plants her flag. One leaked message hinted at an attempt to sway members of the Scottish Parliament into opposing the legitimacy of the upcoming coronation. It's a desperate move, but Andrew no longer sees desperation as weakness. In his mind, it's survival, revenge. And then there's the final scene. A source close to Balmoral revealed Andrew was last seen standing alone near the estate's western ridge, staring into the distance as a lone bagpiper played Flowers of the Forest, a lament for the fallen. He didn't speak, he didn't cry. He simply listened, a prince without a place, a brother eclipsed, a man prepared to burn the old order if it meant someone would finally look back. The world watches, the crown trembles, and Charlotte, she walks forward into destiny. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.